Okay, so for our top-down assembly, we're looking at a strategy that is going to be at that upper level. We have some different tools. We're still going to be looking at 3D sketches. So let's go ahead and get into the assembly, new assembly, double check that we're in. And I don't want to do anything. I mean, we're at the insert, and what happens is I don't have to create one bottom-up part if I don't want to. Let's see, we're fully defined, we're in custom, we're in millimeters, grams, and seconds. So, well, no, let's make that inches, grams, and pounds, and seconds. All right, so change the units over. And on my assembly, we have all the standard items that you got used to. And then we really didn't do anything with layout. And layout, I am not 100% sure, or I'm not 100% trusting on. But layout is a 3D sketch. It's embedded in, built into your assembly. So we're going to try it and see if it's still doing it, so that I can call tech support and gripe again. But basically, in addition, the layout will allow us to create blocks and see how those blocks operate in the way of gear mechanisms, chain mechanisms, the movement within the sketch without actually generating any parts, and then later on we can come back and make parts out of those items. All right, so to get into a layout, we're going to create the layout. That was it. It gives me layout, and this kind of takes the place of my envelope, all right, and that I was doing in the multi-body. It drops me directly into the front plane, treats it as a 2D sketch. I really want to be in the top plane though, because we're going to kind of generate that same geometry. And I don't remember my numbers exactly, so we'll make up some new ones. So 6 by 4. All right, and then keeping on the strategy, let's just go with a couple of verticals. And I'm not seeing my vertical come up, so since I'm at an angle, oh, I'm in the top plane still, so actually I'm drawing that back at that angle. I missed, I blinked. All right, so let's go ahead and undo, and I'll double click and get out of it. For the front plane then, I can go in and we'll set that to vertical, and then tie those together and get out of it, double click, and then I can connect those two points. Missed. All right, so since I missed, notice what happens in the midst of the 3D sketch. When I was right here, it looked like it, but really that thing is coming out and towards me, because that's the direction that floating the floating origin, that's the direction the floating origin was in. All right, so by example, let's go ahead and hit tab, and since that one is going that way, I have a better shot at it. All right, going in that direction versus I think I'm drawing back that way, but really those inference lines, that inference rectangle, those are giving me vector directions. All right, so looking at those dashed yellow lines, that's helping me with a visual reference to pick out which way I'm telling those things to go. So let's get rid of that one, and we'll merge those points, and then that line will go along Z, and we're going to be let's go 3 inches tall. And then I'm gonna simplify this one a little bit with the two sides. So back into the front plane. And we'll just kind of crisscross some of those items. Go with the center line. So one of these is going to get a dimension, and the others are going to be set equal. Yes.
There's nothing in the model tree there that shows. I don't see a sketch or a feature.
Nope. We're inside of the layout. All you get is kind of that little parallelogram in the upper left, and my confirmation corner. That's your only indication that you are sketching at this point, or where you're sketching or what you're sketching with. So let's make that the 1/2 inch. That drives the sides, and we'll go ahead and so I need to get out of my front plane. I'm going to drive one back. So again, I'm not really paying attention. So I haven't done 3D sketches in a while, but I'm not paying attention. But notice that my rectangle is up and over, and that my origin is doing the XY plane as opposed to tab going into YZ or tab going into XZ. Now when I draw, the boxes laying back, and that's kind of your visual reference. It's one of those, you'll pick up that clue, but only after you've made the mistake about 6 times. All right, so I need a wall, and just so happens since I'm in the XZ, that will connect. And I want to go center line back through to my midpoints, and then that center line and that center line can also be equal. All right, so what did I miss? So rotation means that I need to go pick a relational long X for the for being in that 3D sketch. All right, so let's go ahead and accept. And it is, again, it's just this symbol that says I'm in a layout. So it's not as apparent or readily available. The other thing of note, and it's usually about this point if I do the 3D sketch for the envelope or the layout, that I remember the #1 rule of top-down is name this assembly first. So we're going to do the save as. I need to find where I was saving those. All right, so this is going to be the top-down box. Oops, I saved it at the top level. I'll have to put that in the folder later. But as long as I keep everything together, that shouldn't be that big of a deal. All right, so now everything that gets an external reference is referenced back to TD box. If I need to change that name, then I need to go into the SolidWorks Explorer and make sure that when I rename this, all of those external references are updated to whatever the new name is. All right, so where I think I got myself in trouble typically was, let's go ahead back into the sketch. So that's the layout sketch. Before I get away from that, right click, and at the mid to bottom, you can select layout, hide layout, or suppress layout, and then delete. But if I go back into the layout, that's how I'm entering and exit the layout sketch. All right, so not quite as functional as just seeing a 3D sketch there and working from it. Like I said, the make part from block, creating the blocks, having those other items inside of the layout, that's pretty functional. All right, so back into the sketch, we'll do a 3D sketch, and I can see one that I needed to add. Well, let's just go with the right plane. And I'll set a line from the midpoint and miss that one, so we'll go there. Set it horizontal, and then both of those can be for construction. And I'll just set a couple points. I don't think we did that many last time, but we'll go 1/4 inch off of the top, and then one at the midpoint is fine.
Okay.
Yes.
So in the layout, if I'm editing the layout, how do I toggle from the front plane to, like, say, the right plane?
Okay, so any of the 3D sketches, any of the layouts, when you want to toggle the 2D portion, the 2D sketch, let's see, I click out, and then you double click on the front plane. You can double click in the work area, or I believe you can just double click the next plane. All right, so if it's a created plane, a front, top, or right, or you've inserted a plane into a 3D sketch and it is set to visible and you can click on it, you can double click through those planes and that will put you into that sketch orientation, or the sketch into that orientation for you to work in. But it's kind of it's mimicking that you're in a 2D sketch. You are still very much in a 3D sketch. All right, so we got that one. Let's go with the top plane. And kind of losing my perspective there, so I'll go with the midpoint. See if that rotates. So since it's rotating now, because I'm in that that 2D environment, or that 2D plane, it's going to give me horizontal instead of a long X. Right. So when I'm trying to think of the right word, but when I'm mimicking that I'm in that 2D plane, then I can get 2D sketch relations, 2D sketch geometry. All right, so 1 point will go there. And we'll go ahead and set those. I want one. All right, so I grabbed the center line, but that center line is not in the sketch, it's in layout. All right, so I don't get to use that as a mirror plane or as a symmetry plane. So if I need one, I have to create it. I'll go ahead and put the center line on top of, and now when I select, will be symmetric. And then last time we wanted to grow, I went just kind of from the middle out. If I want these holes to move with, these are ultimately going to be hole locations inside of my my components. If I want them to move and stretch with it, then I have to take a different strategy. So we're going to go from the outside in, maybe. Oh, that one picked up a coincident. All right, so since there's a line there and I got coincident, I get both of them? Maybe. All right, so that one's not moving. That one looks pretty good. All right, so inferring those relations, I may have to back up a little bit, see what relations were attached to it, and kind of work back through the process of this one I need, this one I don't need. All right, so my intent here is, instead of always being off of the center, now we're going to be off of the outside edge.
Your relations are now 3D, right?
Once well, the 3D sketches come back, or sorry, the 3D relations come back in when I double click out of that plane. So now if I go to draw a line or do anything, I see that red origin, that floating red origin, and I go back to the XY. Now I'm in the 3D environment. I'm looking at the along X, the along Y, the on plane, on surface type stuff. All right, so that was the location. So the other thing with the mirror, let's grab the center line. We'll go from midpoint to midpoint, and then see if I can grab those 3 points. And inside of the 2D sketch, I can mirror. Well, didn't mirror that one. Let's see if I can get it. Still doesn't like that one. well, I don't know where it's throwing it, but it's not getting it there. So I'm going to go ahead and place the point. Well, those don't all need to be horizontal. So let's go with horizontal and vertical. All right, so rather than creating that additional geometry, we can use some of the symmetry to make that work. All right, so there's different strategies. I don't know that if I sat down and did the 3D sketches, if I did them all in a row, I would get pretty consistent at what worked. But taking a 6-month or a 2-year break, coming back to it, they're going to kind of self-adjust as they get into it. Yes.
I've got dimensions on the lines, and the corners don't line up with the dimension. The video card thing.
No, we'll take a look at it, but when things don't line up, it's usually there's relations or something going on that is not driving through the rest of the geometry. So it's not exactly set or anything that we can pick out. If you were in perspective, you would have some mismatch. That would be about the only video card thing that would come up. So I have my split entities on, and that is the same as coming up to Tools, Sketch Tools, and going to Split Entities. So rather than deleting things that may mess up my relations, I would rather split the entities and leave those items in place, because then I can come back and say, let's go ahead and make that coincident or make it a midpoint. And then when I need to set relations, we'll select midpoint and control select the line, make it midpoint. Well, that didn't quite work out. Let's see, select midpoint. Let go coincident. All right, so some combination of midpoint coincident gets me into that mix. And well, we already have a center line there. Let's see if those will cooperate. So going to 0.75. And what I'm looking for is if we can get to symmetry. So even within the 3D sketch, I can make it symmetric on the relation, but I don't have access to the mirror entities that I have when I'm inside of that top or front right sketch plane. So I can set that to symmetric and it will pick those up. So if I wanted to mirror those, I would go back to the top plane. Well, those aren't exactly in my plane. So probably the first thing I need to try to do or identify is, can I bring those on plane? And it's a little bit low here, but when I go on plane, that brings it into the sketch. It's already in the, how do I say that? It's already in the 3D sketch, but I want it to be on this sketch plane so that I can activate some of those mirror entities. And that one gave me the other section. All right, so we've got that geometry in. Go ahead and save it. So we're into the to actually building now. All right, so here's where we start: virtual components, external components, and those relations being tied together. Where we were in the part, we were creating a solid body. Now I'm going to insert a component and tell it that I'm making new part. In bottom up, we just brought in insert components, and it just kind of rolled with that. Build the component, bring it into the part. When I tell this to make a new part, however, it's going to ask me for a sketch location. By default, it's the front plane. Well, I don't always know that I want it to be the front plane. If I just click out, and I've had several discussions of the advantages of picking a plane versus not. If you go in and pick the front plane, it's going to start a sketch. But what if I don't want the front plane? So my habit or my workflow is just to click out of it, let it create a fixed, we're going to always leave that component fixed. And then it's given a name inside of brackets. So bracket part 3, caret, TD box. That is its location. And when I rename that part, this is going to be the top-down base. Okay, that's its name. I can change that name as long as this is a virtual component as much as I want. As soon as I externalize it, though, I have to be a little more careful or pay attention to what I'm doing when I make that change. All right, so when I right-click on this and go into Edit Part, we're now editing in the context of the assembly. So there's not any other components that tell me, but on the feature manager, on the feature tree, the part that I'm editing is in blue. All right, so we have all of our plane. And so the downside here is that inside of the multi-body, it's a little more familiar. It's a little, creating those objects, creating those bodies is a little more familiar. When we're in the context in the top-down mode, this is pretty much what we have for reference. Any other components that are displayed will be in transparency. So you have a few visual clues to work from, but not a whole lot. So let's go with the front plane. I'll open up a sketch. I'm sketching on top of the layout, and we're going to extrude, and it's going to be an up to vertex.
So you just use your layout lines to create.
The layout is the scaffold again, just pretty much like what we did in the multi-body. The difference is I'm creating a unique part inside of this assembly. So when I go and I don't have to be so concerned with the order, because when I go to the bottom and I say I want to insert my hole wizard item, and this is going to be a countersunk number 10, so 82 degree, number 10, normal up to next, and I go to the positions. I'm picking on those locations, or one of these we need to do a sketch-driven pattern, so this is as good a time as any. So I'm going to throw that into the mix. I go ahead and I accept the first one, and so if I need additional locations, I can just add points. What this is going to do then is that is my my feature. Now, can I do a sketch-driven pattern from here? Maybe not. I bit off more than I could chew. So I would have to convert that geometry. That was more of the multi-body, more on the line boring type stuff. So, well, let's try it. So that item, I want to go into features, and we're going to pick sketch-driven pattern. And if it will allow me to pick up that geometry, how about that? It did. I'm impressed. So it found that sketch location. Now what I want to double check is, whoops, everywhere there's a point. All right, so I still bit off more than I could chew.
So it just used all the points.
Every point that was existing in that sketch got driven and put a location. Now these are going to fail because they're floating out in space. They can't produce those.
Can you delete just those?
Not worth it.
Okay.
I'm gonna chase it more than it's going to be worth. If I really wanted this to be a sketch-driven pattern, I would open up a face, double create a point, sketch at each of those locations. But by the time I do that, I can go back into Sketch 2, which has the external reference. I can go through and I can do this much quicker. If I need to add one, okay, but this isn't that complicated of a pattern, so I'm not that concerned with it.
If you have 3,200 of them.
If I had 3,200 of them, then I would want to convert that sketch in or manage it strictly out of this out of the part. All right, so there's my base. It has its holes in, and yes.
There would seem to be a checkbox that says select point.
But once you start going through, and I don't know how many extra points I'm going to have in that 3D sketch or which one's going to cause it to fail, I can remove that point, I could remove that point, and it would probably be okay, but then I go back later on, I'm setting myself up that, oh, I need a couple more holes over here. Well, I put those couple more holes in, it comes back to this feature, it tries to put them in, and then it fails. Do I remember, or somebody that has no clue what I'm doing opens it up and oh yeah, I'm just going to make this simple change, and then I create a big quagmire for them. So there's a there's a crossover point of is it practical and is it reasonable? So look at that, and it starts putting points up here for no good reason. Yeah, that's probably not in the good practice. I get out of my my top down, or I get out of my my editing in context. Everything goes back, and I have a part. So let's go to the. I'm gonna go ahead and hide that. I don't want to pick up any extra geometry. So let's see. We're gonna come across this way. So I'm gonna go to the right plane. And looks like I missed something in my attempt to streamline the 3D sketch, or the layout. So let's see, let's go with that point, and that line will be coincident. And since I'm floating in the interior of the part, we're going to, oh, and it didn't warn me. I don't know if that's something that I turned off or whatever, but probably a good time for it to happen. I'm just sketching inside of the assembly. This isn't anything I can build a feature off of. This definitely isn't a part. So I'm just going to discard the changes and get it out of there. Insert component, new part. Go ahead and accept. And what that does then is the front plane is aligned to the front plane of the assembly, top plane is aligned to the top plane of the assembly. If I were to pick the top plane of the assembly, it would become the front plane of the part. And I would lose that kind of reference. So it shifts orientation, and sometimes that may be a good thing, but it also probably more confusing than I would like. So top down, wall 1. So, or whatever. Edit the part in context. Open a sketch on the right plane. Go in and pick up those geometries, and we'll go coincident. All right, so same thing that I just did, except now I see a bunch of blue as opposed to being below the mates inside of an assembly sketch. All right, so am I going to be able to build that? Oh, yeah. So in the features, extrude boss base, up to vertex, direction 1. Missed and picked it up to vertex in direction 2. There's my geometry. All right, so this is not going to get the countersinks. This is going to get a tapped hole. So S key, hole wizard, threaded hole. Go back over to the 1032. Up to next, probably not. Blind in condition, 0.47, 0.38 is okay. No near side countersink. We'll go to positions, and I'll go normal 2. And same thing as I'll just pick up those selections. Go to the bottom. Missed. S key, hole wizard. And by pre-selecting on the face and going to the hole wizard, when I go to position, it's not going to ask me for a 3D sketch. All right, so we're going to have to step this up a little bit. And no additional, so into the positions, location, location, location. And S key, well, let's do it without the S, or go into the hole wizard without pre-selecting. All of my same parameters are there. I go into position that says, do you want a 3D sketch? No, you better pick a face. Once I pick the face, then I can go to, let's see, Control 3. It showed me the preview, but it didn't actually select it, and that one was just a little bit off and has it under defined, so I'll edit sketch, and we'll drag back to coincident. So now I have those locations. get out of the part in context. We'll go ahead and hide. And probably the other advantage is that there isn't a limitation on suppressing components at this level, or having to worry about the difference between hide and suppress.
Do you hide the components so you won't reference them?
Yeah. I really want all of the components that I'm inserting tied to this 3D sketch, not to each other. Wherever possible, I don't want this one tied to this one, tied to this one. There may be times where it becomes necessary, but it's going to be limited. So if I have a single point of failure, we're building a house of cards, and the house of cards is very easy to collapse. Right? And then if I'll put it back to that single scaffold, to that single structure, then I've at least made it so that if and when it does fail, I know where to start looking in that sketch, and then I can trace it back into the individual components. All right, so TD wall 2. And insert component, new part, accept. Oh, I already did wall 2. Oh, that was what I was going to do. Let me, let's see, we'll just undo that. New part. And when I pick the front plane, well, that's going to line. That was a bad example. That wasn't quite what I was trying to illustrate at all. So let's go ahead and get rid of part 7 now. Delete, yes. All right, one more time. Insert new part. It's asking me for its location. I go to the top plane, and then I end up in the part. It automatically starts a sketch on the top plane, but the top plane of the assembly is now the front plane of the part. All right, so that shift in orientation, that shift in the way that I'm looking at it or drawing it, I would rather deal with it in the drawing or into my documentation the way that I've created it. All right, so if you for some reason want that to be on the top plane, then that's fine. It will get you there. Otherwise, notice how it went directly into that sketch, into that plane, and drop me there. I'm having to go in and edit the part, and then I'm having to go in and select a plane. In my workflow, that provides greater stability because I know what my frame of reference is. I know what the things are that I'm selecting. All right, so where do I want to be? Front plane, sketch. Pull up the geometry, and then this is going to be an extrude up to vertex. Go to location. So we're going to end up, since we were doing the 1032s, let's go ahead and finish putting those in. And all of my settings should still be in there. One of these times we're going to have to set a favorites. And we'll go ahead and accept. And then on this side we're going to have the countersink. All right, so 82 degree, number 10. That one can be up to next, and not really concerned about positions. Go to 4, get into the positions, set the location. And what I want to do here then is go to center line. Since I didn't create a back, I still need to drive those, so we will mirror the entities. And that should give me my 3 items, my three components to work from. All right, so that gives me the box. So wall 1 we'll bring in. Shouldn't be an orientation issue. So coincident, I'm going to follow the same rules that I did when I completed out the multi-body part. You go concentric. If anything misses on the alignment, like that.
Oh, wow.
So how did I manage that? that was a neat trick. I hope that's nope, it's off.
Are the other ones on?
Nope. So that means that when I put in that, I missed. I thought I fixed it, but apparently not.
You went back to the part?
I'm editing in context. So as soon as, okay, so I didn't have to edit the feature or tell it to edit the part. As soon as I edited that feature, it took me directly into it. It automatically went to the edit. And let's see if we can get that one. Then the fix is to go there. All right, so all I did was edit the sketch down one level, and when I edit the sketch, it drops me into the editing in context of that part. All right, so now that I'm through with it, I go ahead and hit OK. Wow, and then it adjusts on that one. All right, so really, all of these are good examples of the types of things that you will encounter of, oh, I missed. Well, it's not that big of a deal, and I just threw that one way off into space or something. Nope, it didn't complete. So let go first. Coincident. And then this one's going to go here. And concentric. All right, so that gives me the box. All right, so wall one. Oh, that one's still, we didn't finish. And concentric. All right, so the layout is driving the 3D sketch we're not so concerned with. So let's go ahead back into the layout. And this would be where I'd want the global variables because I don't really want to go in and out of the layout all the time to change these items. So D1 at layout, D3 at layout, but let's just do the preliminary test, 10 inches by 6 inches by, oh, no, not that one, that one, by 8 inches, get out of it, and rebuild. Doesn't mean it's going to do it immediately, but it will do it. All right, when we want to hide show the layout, we can hide those items. And what was happening, and I don't know if it was because I was putting too many 3D sketches on top of it, is at some point the layout sketch wouldn't come back. I couldn't show it and get back into that geometry. So that appears to be corrected. I don't know that I'm eager to test that theory, but we'll for right now it's showing. So as long as it doesn't recur, we can go with the layout. If I'm going in with the intention of probably having 3, 4, 5 3D sketches to define my geometry, define hole locations, port locations, something along those lines, then I would probably just go ahead and build everything out as 3D sketches and kind of bypass the layout altogether. Externalizing. So I was going to say next time we'll probably do something in the layout with the blocks, so that we can do the tie-in or the tie back to this. And then I'll have to find one of my top-down assemblies. Well, we kind of went through one already. So, all right, end of the day here. We need to externalize, right? Because the virtual component is going to be difficult to get it into a drawing. I'm going to want to possibly make configurations, put different geometries in the sides, be able to manage this in single units. So when I save the part in external, we're going to make sure it's in the same as the assembly, hit OK. And I'll go ahead and save this document. And now when I go to the find references, which we did on the previous assemblies, TD box back to the is the parent of the wall, the base, and they're all located in that one location. Every one of these has the dash greater than and is an externally referenced part. The dimensions go back to the layout sketch, Oh, so I forgot about that one. If we go to the Layout tab and hit Layout, that'll put us back in. And this would be the point where we could do a height, width, length, material thickness, and in our global variables, and be able to drive those dimensions and make those changes out of those variables. All right. Well, we're running a little bit long, so I'm going to go ahead and finish here, but we'll take questions in a minute.